It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Good morning to you. We're kind of in the home stretch of the program, but I know many of you are the beginning of your day here, and we really appreciate it. Thanks for starting your morning with us. Welcome back to the program. We've got State Representative Kim Hammer is back with us. Kim, welcome to the program. Good morning to you.
Good morning. It's a beautiful morning.
It is. It is. Hey, I wanted to have you on and just kind of talk a little bit about, some of the issues of the day, but more specifically, you are running for the state Senate, and we want to make sure everybody knows that you are running for the Senate. You do have a Democrat opponent. What are some of the issues that are important to you in this race?
Number one, I think with regards to, and I know these are, sometimes have become cliches, but I think they're important phrases. The meaning you put behind the phrases are, demonstrated through the actions. But as far as, the government, state of Arkansas, being more efficient in the way in which we do business, whether that's looking at the, combining of services or the reorganization, such as, Governor Hutchinson is exploring and making sure that whatever reorg comes out that we, A, run it as efficiently as possible with the number of people that we have, and then B, take a look at the policies that are driving the decisions and kind of separate the things that we're doing just for the sake of doing them versus the things that are, actually necessary or directed by the federal government, and we, have to comply with it. That would, that's kind of one of the top things. Secondary would be to look at the financial resources of the state and see if we are managing our money as efficiently and as effectively as possible.
Do you think there's room? Do you think there's room for improvement on that right now, managing our money better?
Oh yeah. In fact, I'm really not at liberty to say, but devising a plan. Been having some meetings with individuals, and probably within the next 30 days, going to reveal a concept that I hope he'll be introduced as a piece of legislation, but just in the process of refining it. But there is a way in which we can make our money work harder for us, and that's part of it. If you're not making the money you've got work harder for you, why should you ask for any more money? And do you really need to ask for any more money if you can make the money you've got work harder for you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think a lot of Arkansans, they're very aware of how much money we're giving to the state of Arkansas, for example. I mean, the state of Arkansas took a record amount of revenue from the people last year. And so, when there is maybe a year ago, there were some proposed tax increases. There was the idea of a gas tax increase and things like that. That failed. But if we're taking record revenue from the people, and yet we still don't seem to have money for highways, or we seem to have every year we're like, oh, where's the money for the matching rate going to come from? I think some Arkansans a lot of us are thinking, well, hang on, we're already giving you money to do these things, so maybe we're not spending the money that we're giving appropriately. What are your thoughts on that idea?
Well, if you're taking in record amounts, and the Treasury report is going to be coming out sometime the 1st of August, I think, as far as the what the earnings on the Treasury are. I think you throw that into the picture also. I do think it's time to hit the pause button and just say, okay, before we give out or expand or increase anything, can we take what we have and reduce what we're doing, kind of like I was saying a while ago, without the need to raise taxes or and taxes are just a necessity of life. Even Jesus paid his taxes. Okay. So he acknowledged that taxes are a part of life in order to fund and to run your government. I'm not anti-tax. What I am is anti-spending. And, if you get your spending under control and you only provide the services that are essential, and that's a whole nother turf war, is everything we're doing actually essential, or is it just because somebody else isn't, doing their job, and so we make it essential with no justification? That's kind of a third tier of a thing that I'm interested in working on is identifying what is actually essential, because then we can start to cut back the justification to raise taxes. And I think that's where you win the battle, is cut back the justification for why taxes are asked for by eliminating the justification for what you're trying to get it for.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think certainly that's a good avenue. I mean, every dollar that is spent, if it's in your sector, then it's essential. If it's in your wheelhouse, then of course you're going to argue that it's essential, and that's the problem that we have. I think that the best way to do this is to attempt to gauge, okay, what is the highest majority agree the function of government should be. And I for example, I know I keep going back to roads, but I'm thinking, like, I think most people would say, okay, yeah, this is a function of government that it benefits so many people, versus this program or that program that, benefits less people. And I think that's certainly kind of an economic triage, if you will, just a way of looking at this. You have I mentioned earlier, Democrat opponent. Her name is Melissa Fultz, I believe. And I was looking at some of the PACs that she's associated with that have, that are supporting her, like Women in Arkansas or something like that. And it seems to me, and I'm speculating here, but it kind of seems to me she's kind of jumped on board this, anti-Trump sentiment that you're seeing across the country, and maybe attempting to run on supposed outrage about what the president's doing. Of course, his poll numbers are up. The country loves him. People in Arkansas love him. But anyway, do you want to speak to that at all?
I would just say one of the best things that my opponent can do is continue to come out against Trump, because I agree. I think that, hey, Trump is not perfect. He's got his baggage. He's like the rest of us. Let him without sin cast the first stone, okay? I get it. But I do believe, with having a little time in office now, personally, I really believe that God appointed Trump to the position that he's in, and I think he's made it evident by his actions. Not that God agrees with all of his actions. Don't get me wrong, and don't read into anything I'm saying. But what he has been able to do in the time that he's been able to be in office against the obstacles that have been put in his way is nothing less than supernatural, because he has achieved some great things. Of course, the media is what the media is. Just accept the fact that that's the way they're always going to be. They're not going to change.
Yeah.
If they change, they go out of business. So I think that if anyone that is running their campaign dependent upon people aligning with them because they dislike Trump, I think is a flaw in their political approach. And
well, especially in Arkansas,
I think that'll be a good thing.
Yeah, especially in Arkansas. Yeah. No. I just want to say I really applaud you for being honest with what you think and about President Trump in this manner, because I would agree with you in your sentiments there. It is amazing to me to see what he has accomplished in such a short amount of time, and the obstacles, and how he's tearing down I don't know, it's almost like the captive audience that America was with the media specifically. And I have been recently, Kim, I've reminded of Psalm 35. In Psalm 35, it actually talks about, it's a prayer from David, and is asking, like, his enemies actually fall into their own nets. The nets that they have laid for him, would they fall into their own nets? And it's a fascinating piece of scripture. And it, to me, in a lot of ways, I think we have seen that play out many times with the media or the deep state or whatever. There appear to be these nets that have been set, and the media keeps falling into their own traps that they're attempting to set for them. And it's you mentioned the word supernatural. I would be lying if I said that hasn't crossed my mind as a possibility.
Well, somebody was talking on the radio the other day, this is not a time to be passive. This is a time to identify yourself, take a stand. And it, in my opinion, in America's history, we've had some very times that have really pushed us to our limits as a nation, and have really started to rip the thread that's holding us together. I think this is one of those times, and it's not time to be weak. It's time to step up and be strong, and it's time to, above all time, look to God and, seek His wisdom, seek His guidance, because the only way that we're going to survive as a nation isn't going to be because of Donald Trump. It's going to be because we turn back to God, and those who align with His values, principles, teachings. I think those are the ones that God's going to bless, and those are the ones that are going to stand out among the darkness of the nation and give people something to look to and hope for.
We're talking with State Representative Kim Hammer. He is the current representative for District 28, but he's running. Joe, is it 30? Is it 33, Kim?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
33.
So Senate District 33. Now that is the district currently, or the seat currently occupied by Senator Jeremy Hutchinson. He's not running for re-election. But I need to ask you, Kim, in preparing to go to the higher chamber, I know your colleagues in the House would disagree, and you may disagree that it's the higher chamber. But in preparing to go to the higher chamber, obviously, the elephant in the room here is the massive amounts of corruption that have been in the headlines, throughout the last year or so. We obviously have the Senate. They have proposed ethics rules and things like that, but we still have, we had a guilty plea the other day, last Thursday afternoon. So are you aware? I mean, I know you're aware, but I mean, what does that do to somebody like you? You're going into the Senate, and yet it does seem that it's a time of transition or upheaval, where there has been all of this exposed, and the people of Arkansas we may be at a point where we're losing confidence in our elected officials to not enrich themselves, to not influence, peddle, and make extra money on the side. Do you have any ideas, or what are your thoughts on that, and how to make it better, sir?
Sure. Well, going back to your opening statement, the higher chamber is the chamber that's higher to God. And I think whichever chamber, and I'm saying this a little bit facetiously, but both chambers and the administrative branch, need to align with the principles of God, because if we were walking in step with the principles of God, we wouldn't have as much front page news as we've been having in the last year. Now, again, that's not to, present as holier than thou. It's, always mindful that by the grace of God, there go I, and let him without sin cast the first stone. The fact of the matter is, we've got an image problem, and that image problem has been created by some members of each party that has cast a dark shadow over the institution. And I think with regards to, what the Senate is doing by revisiting their rules, I think that's great. I think that's a good step of self-image improvement on the Senate end. But I'm more interested in initiating laws that come with things such as prison time and felony charges if you violate the law to the level that has been violated. And I know those things are there to a certain degree now, and some are going to experience that. But I think the effort to make things more transparent, more accountable, need to be in the letter of the law, not the rule book of the chamber. And that is, that's what I'm pushing for. Senator Mark Johnson, brand new senator coming in, that's a passion of his. There are several others. I've already refiled the legislation that I attempted to get through last time that I was unsuccessful. That I think if the events of last year were occurring 2 years ago, it would have been easier for me to get this piece of legislation through than I'm trying to now.
What would it have done? What would it have done, Kim?
It would require that if you, as a member of the legislative branch, run a piece of legislation and you represent, or you would personally gain from that, you would have to file a copy of that with the Secretary of State to become official document. And the whole intent of it is that if you didn't and it became known, then there would be, penalties of law, including, criminal charges. And the fact of the matter is, if somebody wants to do something wrong, if somebody has some ulterior motive, if somebody's going to try to slip something through, it doesn't really matter what law we've got on the book. that's a problem of the heart, not the problem of the law, and they're going to do it. So we just have to make sure that all the safeguards are in place and heighten that bar to hold them accountable, so that if they do it, they know they're all going to get caught, as we are seeing now. They're all going to get caught, and put that fear back into their thought processes.
Yeah, well, I still think there's some. I mean, I still think maybe there's more indictments to come. And I hope they all get caught. I hope we do have that justice. Just from a confidence standpoint, we're talking with State Representative Kim Hammer on a specific question about corruption and ethics reform. How do you handle this attorney problem, Kim? How do you handle allowing an attorney to still be a state representative or a state senator, but not allowing them to funnel money through their law practice for no actual legal services, but instead, representing, clients with bills and resolutions and things like that? I mean, how do you police something like that?
Well, I think the legislation I've got and the legislation that some others are looking at putting in, that I'm really not at liberty to talk about now, are going to help address that problem. And let me say, this is not an anti-lawyer bill. You could own a furniture warehouse. I work for a hospice. I could do something that would benefit, my hospice. It really goes back to what I said a while ago. It's a problem with the heart, and it's a problem with the moral fabric of the person who's doing the actions than it is sometimes the law. So, I think we need people from all walks of life in the chambers. However, I think all walks of life need to be treated equal when you're in the chamber, regardless of whatever your occupation is. If you're an attorney, I think you just have to weigh that out in your decision to run and let your clients know that, hey, I'm going to run. If it becomes a conflict of interest, I may not be able to represent you as far as, taking a retainer, or I certainly won't be able to take money while I run your piece of legislation. I think it becomes truly an ethics question that a person has to wrestle with.
Yeah.
And that applies to all walks, all occupations of life.
I think that's good. I think that's a really good idea. The goal is to make sure everybody is treated equally. All professions are treated equally. If you're a politician, State Representative Kim Hammer, I'd love to do this again. Good luck in your race, and if you can go ahead and give, there may be people out there listening that want to help with your campaign, want to make sure that a Republican goes in this particular seat and not the Democrat. Where could they find more information out from you?
We're developing the website, so it's out there just for reference point, but they can go for hammerforsenate.com. That's hammer like a tool, the number 4, senate.com.
All righty, hammerforsenate.com. Kim Hammer, we appreciate it, sir. You have a great morning.
Thanks for the interview. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Folks, we're going to take a break. This is Conduit News, and we'll be back in just a moment.